My narcissistic abuse family, my topic today is so money. Every single thing I'm talking about applies to me, and I love to share this stuff with you when I get this information in the hopes that I will help you somehow or validate you. We're all in this together. We're getting through the CPTSD that we suffer as a result of having narcissistic parents, excuses for parents, rather. But my topic today is hypervigilance. I have a couple resources that I'm going to refer to, but oh my gosh, this was such a revelation for me. I'm sure that when I go through all of this, you'll just be nodding your head and acknowledging that, yeah, definitely, this applies to you too. Hypervigilance is when the nervous system is not correctly filtering sensory information and we become stuck in an enhanced state of sensory sensitivity. A lot of us are empaths, so I always attributed these things to being an empath, but it's like exponential, we'll say. Like some of the sensitivities that we'll experience because of our trauma due to hypervigilance are also overlapping with being an empath, so it's like off the charts, these symptoms for us. It's crazy. It's a dysregulated nervous system caused by traumatic events, CPTSD, PTSD typically, but in our case, we're talking about complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's why we suffer from hypervigilance. It's when you're constantly on the lookout for perceived dangers. In some cases, the nervous system is chronically dysregulated, causing a sense of stress signals that are not appropriate, and they're exaggerated responses. It can cause anxiety or perpetuate anxiety, which causes exhaustion. Ding. Cause abnormally increased arousal, high responsiveness to stimuli, constant scanning of your environment. Hypervigilance, there's a perpetual scanning of the environment to search for sights, sounds, people, behaviors, smells, anything that you're looking to protect yourself from that we've been conditioned to do because of our toxic upbringings. This is different from dysphoric hyperarousal, because when people are experiencing that hyperphoric hyperarousal, that's when they actually lose touch with reality. See, this is where it becomes complicated, because we seem like we're all here, but under the surface, we're suffering all of this stress responses, trauma responses. And that's definitely my situation. In a lot of our situations, this has resulted in chronic illness. Big surprise, because our bodies are not designed. Oh, I'm losing my paper. Our bodies are not designed to sustain extended periods of stress, hyperarousal, hypervigilance. So, I'm sorry, I told you I have a lot of information on this topic because I am totally fascinated by it. So hypervigilance, a lot of people suffer severe anxiety, myself included, enough to induce a delusional state where you can get a 1,000-yard stare. I do this all the time. You just stare off at nothing, because it's kind of like you're hypervigilant, so you're over stimulated, essentially. You're constantly like on the lookout for something that's going to threaten you or hurt you, or, you know, because when we're children growing up in that environment, it's severely traumatic. And it's different from paranoia, because people that are paranoid, that also include schizophrenia and other disorders of that nature, it can be superficially similar, but it's characteristically very different. People suffering from hypervigilance may become preoccupied with scanning their environment for possible threats, causing them to lose connections with your friends and family. It's like you're not all there. Definitely I do this. You can overreact to unexpected noises or become agitated in highly crowded or noisy environments. You have a difficult time getting to sleep or staying asleep. Sustained states of hypervigilance lasting for a decade or more lead to higher sensitivity disturbances in your local environment and an inability to tolerate very small or large groups. You know, that's a characteristic of being an empath as well. It's like you get overstimulated in a crowd. You have an aversion to loud noises. All of these things applicable to myself, but that is also an indication of hypervigilance, which is a result of trauma or CPTSD. So it's heightened state of arousal, stress, or sensitivity to certain stimuli. It can cause intense emotional reactions, anxiety, and impulsive patterns of behavior. It makes us feel alert to hidden dangers. It's a primal sense of threat. So you're always like anxious or walking on eggshells and you don't know why. You can't pinpoint it. Trauma response. So our reactions, basically our behavior, is disproportionate to the reality. We just always feel uneasy, and we could be triggered by alarm bells or something loud, like I said, for no reason. And we usually have a sense of urgency, again, to perceived threats. Hypervigilance is a state which can be enhanced by extended periods of anxiety, conflict, trauma, illness, or significant loss, like a death. I mean, oh my goodness, all of this applies to me again. But it's like you're constantly on alert. You're constantly searching for evidence of a threat, even when it's not there. Like, you can be totally safe in a totally secure environment, but you're always looking for something that is threatening to you. Because, again, as a child raised in this environment, everything was threatening. It's like we had no security. If you were in a narcissistic relationship, same thing. They don't ever want you to feel secure. They always want to keep you on your toes, keep you doting on them and kissing their butts. So as a result of this, you can typically avoid socially challenging situations or relationships which bring you into close contact and confrontation with others. These situations are often triggers for us. Hypervigilance, man. So, people that experience hypervigilance are susceptible to their own underlying feelings of helplessness, vulnerability, and worthlessness. All of this is a result of our toxic upbringings. And you darn well know that we have been programmed to believe that we are worthless, right? So the vulnerability and the helplessness comes from having a narcissistic parent, somebody that's not nurturing you, not looking out for you, not protecting your best interest. When you're a child, you're entirely vulnerable. And you constantly fear criticism, so you're always looking to please others. You experience feelings of blame or disapproval by a loved one. An ingrained state of vigilance may have been due to a present crisis, but in our situations, we're talking about previous trauma, continued conflict, which if you have a narcissist still in your life, that's your continued conflict, may be due, this one's so good, may be due to growing up with an overly anxious or absent parents. Like, this is the conundrum of having narcissistic parents. It's like they're physically there, right? They fool everyone into thinking that they're good parents, but they're not nurturing us, they're not loving us, they're not fulfilling any of our human basic needs. Like an explosive domestic environment can cause this. And this makes so much sense. So if a child does not learn to process intense emotion or has not been mirrored by a parent and allowed to express themselves fully, it results in a susceptibility to emotions and behaviors. Like, we were not, again, early childhood development, I can't stress that enough. It's the most critical period in a human's life. It sets the precedent for our adult dynamics, our relationships with ourselves and with others, healthy or unhealthy as a result of the way we were raised, how we perceive ourselves, our self-respect, our self-worth, and how we interact with other people. Anxiety. So again, I'm sorry, I got excited and off track. But like, when your parent, as a parent, they're supposed to mirror you and validate your feelings and give you that platform to feel like you're a secure, worthy individual. Narcissistic parents don't do that. Couldn't be farther from it. So the anxiety from these situations is not fully processed or regulated and results in chronic feelings of hypervigilance. So that's always scanning, watching, and waiting for disaster to erupt. It's just, we're stuck in this constant fight or flight, basically. Emotional responses triggered by hypervigilance are anxiety, fear, or panic, anger or violence, incessant worrying, deep sense of injustice, black or white thinking, catastrophic thinking, I've gone over that, fear of others' judgment. We also have a relentless inner critic, so we have a relentless fear of the way others perceive us, a spiral of negative thinking, self-loathing or judging others, dissociative states or detachment, emotional withdrawal or shutdown. Once a person has remained in a heightened state of alert for a period of time, they may have learned to respond with various coping mechanisms and defenses, which are both conscious and unconscious. Unconscious is my biggest nemesis. So these avoidance behaviors are planned in advance but not communicated, like avoiding crowds. Unconsciously, these avoidance behaviors are automatic and coping mechanisms that you don't give thought to. They're attributed to a great sense of injustice, victimization, and resentment. The degree of which you are hypervigilant comes from experience and the degree to which you're triggered. So ways that you can be hypervigilant, signs of it, are daydreaming, not participating, avoiding social settings, running away from things, not engaging in conversation, scanning and monitoring for threats, always, risk averse and fear of new situations, escape strategies in new social situations, not facing up to things which are difficult, procrastination and not meeting deadlines, avoiding making contact with family and friends, avoidance of closeness or emotional intimacy. Again, that's a way to kind of just spare yourself from the disappointment or the threat. Emotional detachment and withdrawal behaviors, adverse to making decisions or accepting responsibility, non-engaged behaviors like clumsiness, failure, and self-sabotage, avoidance of panicky thoughts and feelings which can lead to forgetting, controlling behaviors that focus on not letting others express themselves, avoidance of panicky thoughts and feelings which can lead to forgetting, lateness, and clumsiness. It's like the same thing, but anyway, you get the idea. All of these things are stuff that I struggle with, that I absolutely experience in my life. Once you have built up a deeper awareness of your triggers, emotional responses, and behaviors, you can go about reducing these symptoms, self-regulating your emotional states, and expressing your vulnerability to others with a sense of empathy, compassion, and being accepted. This includes boundaries, which is a big factor in our healing and recovery. So, I have another list of everything goes. I have another list of stimuli which can trigger hypervigilance. Feeling trapped. This happens to me all the time. It's funny because I was just talking about this to my husband. Like, if I'm in a place, like, I'm always looking for, like, a way to get out. And there's no, foundation for this. It's just something I do. It's a result of hypervigilance. Breathing difficulties. This is huge. I catch myself with this all the time. It's like, one of the best ways that you can regulate your stress and anxiety is by paying attention to your breath. I notice it myself all the time because I make it a point to meditate. And when you're meditating, you're regulating your breathing. So when you're hypervigilant, a lot of times you're not breathing properly. You're not taking complete breaths in or complete breaths out. So sudden and loud noises can be a trigger. Shouting in arguments, a sense of abandonment, anticipating fear or uncertainty, feeling shamed or criticized, emotional distress, emotional overstimulation or understimulation, nightmares, flashbacks, reminders of past trauma, competing demands and expectations of others, random, sudden, chaotic behaviors of others. All of these things can trigger hypervigilance. So, hypervigilance generally is a sense of simmering tension and unease. The body is under tension, causing tremors, stiffness, rigidity, or exhaustion. Underbreathing or overbreathing, causing a sense of suffocation, feeling trapped. Once triggered, hypervigilance may cause enhanced or intense emotional responses. Activating a fight or flight response, emotions are raised to the point of alarm, even panic. Okay, so in order to reduce our hypervigilance, we can be still, be mindful and just aware of your current situation. Again, being safe and just acknowledging that. So slowing down, being listened to, validating emotions, observing sensations, pausing before reacting, self-reflecting exercises, nonverbal empathizing, mindfulness of breathing, assertive communication, self-regulating emotions, creating self-care routines, repairing after arguments. That's huge for me. I know that, like, whenever my husband, we don't fight a lot, but when there's a disagreement or we don't see eye to eye on something, when we talk it out, communicate, and get over it, that's a huge relief for me. Always is. So you check for objective evidence. You can tolerate difficult emotions, express your emotional states, put up boundaries with others, acknowledge your pain and fear, enjoy moments of sensual pleasure. This is great. I just saw something about how you can break out of the fight or flight, and they said that sex is one of the ways to do so. My husband loves anything related to sex, so yeah, if a sensual pleasure, having sex can break you out of the fight or flight. Listen to non-judgmental feedback, showing kindness and generosity to ourselves, which is huge. Be open and honest about difficult emotions. Alright guys, so I hope I provided you with some good information. Please like, subscribe, share with anyone you think this applies to. But this has been something that I've been wanting to learn more about for a while. And absolutely, it did not disappoint. Hypervigilance is a huge symptom of CPTSD. Sorry for all the background noise. I don't know what's going on over there. Everyone is home. So, alright guys, I love you all, and I hope I provided you with some helpful, useful information. Again, like I said, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. That would be awesome. Please like, give me a thumbs up so I know that this is of value to you. Please share with anyone that it applies to. We're bumped and we're bruised, but more than anything, we are blessed. Love you all. Be back soon.